Thank you, and welcome everyone for attending this exciting and important, actually, a webinar organized by Arigato. Thank you, Arigato, for organizing and hosted. And we will have people and experts who will speak about the topic of spirituality and what do we know from the science and from all the different areas of research about children and their spirituality. This work has started by 4 years ago by what we call the network for children and spirituality, and understanding this whole concept of how children express their spirituality. But we also worked on, for 4 years or even more, worked on the idea of how can we translate this knowledge we accumulated into a toolbox that is, or a toolkit that is useful and easy and accessible to people around the world. And with the help of several organizations and Arigato leading this effort, we were able to implement and pilot this toolkit in many countries. So I think this webinar will add to this knowledge and will inform us even more with so many experts on this panel. So what we will do is we will start with the expert presentations. Some will have PowerPoint and some will not. Each of the experts was given 2 questions to address, and I'm going to let them say those questions if they would like to, because we wanted this discussion to be focused and to be actually pointed to the important current issues around children and the spirituality. We will start with the speakers, one after the other, and then we will open it for questions and answers. I will be, if you feel the questions to me, I will be asking them during the Q&A. And I hope you enjoy it. I hope you find it insightful. And I would like to turn it to Dr. Lisa Miller, who will start us on some of the scientific knowledge we know about children, their brains, their ways of thinking, and spirituality in children. Dr. Lisa, without further ado, I would like you to present yourself and go ahead with your notes. Thank you.
Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. And I want to thank Arigato for your gracious hospitality, my colleagues, and my abiding colleague of a decade, Xiaoan Li from the Fetzer Institute, who is leading a world network in effectively creating a catalytic hub on behalf of spirituality in children, bringing together experts, all of us here. So Xiaoan, we salute you. Thank you. If I may, I'd like to share screen. And I hope that what I share with you today elevates the importance of this global network, your deep purpose, and all those who join us as attendees from faith-based organization, government, NGOs, in strengthening the spiritual core of the whole child. What we will see in now 25 years of peer-reviewed science is that what you do is the most important form of support in the health, mental health, wellness, civil, and eco-socialization of every child. So please view this science, if you will, as a mirror, as a form of witness onto the importance of your work. And perhaps evermore, this science might be a roadmap for continued points of intervention and ways of extruding this roadmap into ongoing points of action, as you so elegantly, all of you, already are doing. So let's start together. I'm Dr. Lisa Miller. I've been a professor at Columbia University in New York City for 25 years. For 25 years at Columbia University, I have studied spirituality in children and adolescents and its life-changing effect onto the rest of our lives. So as we meet here as a global community, beautiful children in all of our fellow countries, you may hear people in your own country say, is my child a spiritual child? Who are the spiritual children? Which country has more spiritual children? Well, it turns out that every single child on earth is a spiritual child. Every child is born with a birthright. It is an innate capacity for spiritual life. An innate capacity for spiritual life. Sounds like a bold claim. What's the proof? What do you mean? And yet I will share with you in aggregate and references for your continued use, a very strong peer review science that shows over hundreds of published peer review scientific articles summed in the spiritual child. If you would like a reference, I've already been paid. I'm not selling books. That spirituality and religion are both tremendously important, and they go hand in hand for about 7 out of 10 families on earth. But they are not the same thing. The beautiful faith traditions of our world, whether we are Hindu, Muslim, Jewish, Catholic, Christian, Jain, Buddhist, spiritual, all forms of our beautiful faith traditions, our religions, the text, the sacred convening and ceremony, the deep traditions and prayers and meditations, those are a gift of our parents, our grandparents, our pastor, priest, imam, rabbi. Those are a gift. They are environmentally transmitted. Spirituality, by contrast, is innate. We are born on day one, every one of us, with a natural capacity for spiritual life. Spirituality is our birthright. And whatever tradition may be the rich embrace, whether I am Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Catholic, Christian, whatever religion might be the rich embrace of my spiritual core, that child is a spiritual child. Now, where in the brain is the neurocircuitry for spiritual awareness? We published this in JAMA Psychiatry, Journal of the American Medical Association, Psychiatry, the most demanding peer review science journal in the States. These are the neural correlates of spiritual awareness. This is not a claim that somehow the brain makes spirituality. This is a sharing that there is a biological correlate. We're incarnate beings. One might use the term neurodocking station to hold on to the truth that we are body, mind, and spirit. So these are the neurocorrelates of our innate spiritual brain, the spiritual brain that is our birthright. When we look at the child and how he or she grows up over the years, we see that this birthright for spiritual awareness in every single one of us is 1/3 innate. It is in us, but it is 2/3 environmentally formed by the embrace of our faith community, of our parents, of our grandparents, of the 10,000 micro exchanges in our community centers, schools. So the child is a naturally spiritual child, but a 2/3 environmental shaping of the core means that we have a tremendous impact on every child's formation. This makes the child's natural spirituality and its support and nurturance, as the language of Arigato so beautifully puts the nurturance, not the teaching, not the installation, but the shaping of that which is already there, a human right. As we are physical, emotional, intellectual beings, so too we are spiritual beings. And it's coming to fruition is our right. How do we know that? Clinical science uses a twin study. We look at twins raised together, twins raised apart. and factor out the commonality as a function of shared genes and environment. In the spiritual child, I reference this in more depth. For the sake of time, I'll move on. But simply to emphasize that as we grow older and look at longitudinal twin studies, there is more and more and more of a surge into middle adolescence, puberty, from the inside out, a biological clock. So that the focus of our work today on early childhood is foundational in shaping the spiritual core that will be the bedrock of late adolescent, emerging adult formation, and indeed they're the rest of our lives. Why is this significant, this birthright in formation? Right now, we face a global pandemic in youth. And as you know, the real pandemic in youth is the diseases of despair, addiction, depression, isolation, anxiety, and suicidality. In much of the post-industrial world, the rate of death by suicide rivals the rate of death by auto accident as the #1 killer of youth. We have never faced a time, and with the sharp escalation in the diseases of despair has been an equal sharp decline in family, faith, tradition, personal, spiritual life, and the two indeed go hand in hand statistically. This is a direct point of intervention. We have the antidote to the diseases of despair. We have the antidote to the global pandemic of suicide. And it is a strong spiritual core. It is the rich embrace, the 2/3 environmental shaping of the spiritual core. Here's the data. A young person who's a standard deviation above as compared to below the mean, and a tendency to say, I turn to my higher power. Remember, the word from the rich embrace of religion could be God, Allah, Hashem, the universe, spirit, whatever their word. I turn to God, my higher power, for guidance, versus I don't know what you're talking about in times of difficulty, is 80% a decreased risk for addiction, 60 to 75% decreased risk for major depression, far less likely to take risks. And in a study of studies, I'm concerned this is cut off, so I'm going to call it out. The most important finding in science right now: a teen is 82%, 4/5 less likely to take his or her life if there's a strong spiritual core that is shared. If I told you, here's a pill, and you can give this starting in childhood every day, like vitamin C, and this child will be protected 4/5 against the pandemic of suicide, what school, what parent, what public health, what government, who wouldn't give that to the child? And yet this is who we are and how we're built. We are built to engage the spiritual core. Now, scientists do not define spirituality, all told, this natural birthright in its experience, but we have identified quite precisely the threads of spiritual life. And they are best perhaps understood through this image here as threads of perception, the capacity to perceive. And as we look quite specifically, we see that there is a deep capacity to perceive that we are never alone. The parietal puts in and out hard boundaries. We are loved and held by God, Spirit, Allah, Hashem, life itself. Never alone, loved and held. And we are guided. We shift. Each of these deep capacities has a neural correlate. We wait in many countries.
Dr. Miller, sorry, Dr. Miller.
Down the road, downstream in adolescence, early adulthood, the trailhead for a lifelong course of addiction, suffering, depression, to say you can learn to hand it over in AA.
Dr. Miller, you have one minute, please. I need you to
love. Is how we're built. We are hardwired to perceive. We are loved and held, guided, and never alone. This is relational spirituality. It is the antidote to the chronic suffering that riddles our global community. The chronic illusion of separateness, radical separateness, is why young people feel isolated and despairing and
Dr.
fearful.
Miller, I'm afraid,
And
I don't know if you can hear me, Dr. Miller. Hello? Dr. Miller, can you hear me?
Getting along. They somehow think they're more different than the same.
Hello, Dr. Miller, you have
senior people in the United States Pentagon. I said, people are 98% the same. He looked over and said, I agree. People are 98% the same. Radical separateness has caused civil dislocation, eco harm. We don't realize we're the same as fellow living beings, that we literally are moms and dads, just like fellow living beings on four or with wings. So this is our birthright, our natural spirituality. And when we realize this in childhood and adolescence, we are healthier, we are more protected against the pandemic of despair. Let's look at the upside. How
Dr. Miller, excuse me, sorry. Can you hear me? Can you
into an
hear me?
understanding will it be good and to one another? Way upstream of what downstream would be violence. How do we lead people to realize their deep felt relational spirituality, that just as they feel loved, held, guided, and never alone by their higher power, so too that same neuro docking station lets us know that we can be loving, holding, and guiding to one another and never lead anyone alone. Both are forms of relational spirituality. As I feel the presence of the love of my higher power, so too that presence is in my love for fellow human beings, love of neighbor. Both use the same red brain, the same neural correlates of relational spirituality. How do we cultivate these
Dr. Miller
forms of relational spirituality? Any effort that supports the spiritual core will make all downstream efforts deeper and more long-standing.
Dr. Miller,
Here it is. Well, I'll do it this way. I invite you to think of a young person you know with lots of grit, now one with optimism, and now with forgiveness. How many people are you thinking of? You've known many wonderful people. The character strengths and virtues cluster in the same people. They go hand in hand. People are high, blue, medium, green, or red, low. Why? This is on page 246 of The Spiritual Child. Because life with and without a spiritual core is perceived entirely different. Who are you? Who am I? I'm a soul on earth, which makes you a soul on earth. It's something I see, feel, and know very deeply.
Dr. Miller,
that is a very far upstream stance of narrow competition or superficial reasons for hate. A deep, resounding relational spirituality. And this is the work of the Collaborative for Spirituality in Education. Fetzer has stood by our side for nearly a decade as we took this roadmap of science and transformed it into a method that any school, any faith-based organization, any NGO, any community organization can use to support relational spirituality, supporting all efforts at capacities to be that much more enduring and long-standing. I want to thank you,
Dr. Miller. Thank you, Dr. Miller.
Here, my colleagues. There's much to share, much to discuss, and I look forward to learning from you.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. Now I'm not sure if you all can hear me. Can you all hear me? That's the beauty and the
yes, we can hear you.
You can
yes,
hear
we
me.
can.
Okay.
We can.
Okay,
yes,
okay. Well, I want to thank Dr. Lisa Miller, professor in the clinical psychology program, as we put it in the chat, at Teachers College at Columbia University. She is the founder and the director of the Spirituality Mind Body Institute. Dr. Miller, thank you. And we will move to the next speaker, Dr. Dominique Richardson, Managing Director, the Learning for Wellbeing Institute. Dr. Miller will talk about the core capacities for living and learning in childhood, and will talk to us about this from his perspective on well-being. Dr. Richardson, please go ahead, and you have 8 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Or maybe 10, I'm sorry, 10 minutes.
Okay, all right. It's great listening to Lisa as always. And Lisa mentioned things related to sort of the innate aspects of development in childhood and what it means to be human. And the work we did with the Fetzer Institute and the Learning for Wellbeing Foundation whilst I was at UNICEF asked the very question, so what makes me, particularly in child development, within a broader framework of well-being. Let me just see, am I able to move across? Within a broader framework of well-being and human development, some not dissimilar to the models used by Bronfenbrenner, we've looked particularly at core capacities. And core capacities in this case refer to the innate human skills which facilitate children and people in general connecting with themselves, with others, and with the world around them, built or natural. And it's in this connection that it's that actual line explaining connections, which describes how we define spiritual well-being. We think about spiritual well-being in the same sense as you might think about eudaimonia, active engagement in a purposeful life. We'd agree with the definitions of Benson, which say it doesn't necessarily need to be religious. It could come from anywhere, but it's your active participation in a purposeful life, how you know things, how you live, or indeed Elkins, whatever you consider to be transcendent or beyond, things that drive you. But to feel that drive and to achieve the drive, or to be fully spiritual, to be fully well, you need to be able to do this. So you need some skills, and this is what we refer to as core capacities. So the ability to relate with yourself and others, but it's also the building blocks of more complex life skills, which everybody's interested in, communication skills, negotiation skills, things get on, that get you on in work. But they're so simple, they're often overlooked. So we're talking about things like listening, empathy, sensing. When we write about them, we don't promote economic, social, or civic returns above any other. And we believe these evolve as children grow, but not necessarily in a straightforward way. It's not as if creativity starts slow and gets big, or inquiring skills start slow and gets big. It actually can be the other way. And obviously, there's also fluctuations in development of innate human skills. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second. But we believe these drive unique and full potential. And in doing so, they give the best chance of a child living a spiritual life and generally a better life altogether. So there's 9 core capacities. There's a little girl showing them all. On the top left, she's discerning patterns, putting the jigsaw together. She's listening with the string and the can. I don't know whether you remember doing that as a kid. Embodying is where she's in a tree. She's observing through the telescope. She's empathizing with the flower. She's reflecting in the book as she writes her journal. She's sensing with the butterfly and meditating there. She's inquiring with a spyglass. And in the middle there, it's relaxing, which we actually think is probably the most important of the core capacities, given it facilitates action in the rest. But core capacities sit within, as I say, in a broader model. An appreciation in education systems, in families beyond, in the world as a whole. There needs to be an appreciation of how complex it is to achieve holistic child well-being. Children are complex systems themselves, but most human development models just consider children as being at the center of complex social systems, as if they're not part of those systems, as if they're subject to those systems. Well, this model that you see in front of you is an adaptation of Bronfenbrenner plus the learning for well-being over the years that includes expression and influence. That means active engagement, participation, the eudaimonia that we're looking for, the connectedness. And all of this sits in mental, physical, emotional, which Lisa mentioned, but this is all sits in a spiritual context. So what can core capacity achieve if we look at them properly? Well, first of all, well-being in all its forms, or holistic well-being includes spiritual well-being. It helps us define metrics for children. If we measure what matters, then we can adapt our policies and thinking to it. You may know that Lisa mentioned human rights. Spiritual well-being is mentioned 4 times in the UNCRC, 4 times. That's 4 times more than life skills. That's 4 times more than relative income poverty. We need to measure these things better, and so we can achieve these rights for children. Also, it helps us understand how parenting and adult interactions with children work and the social conditions or the moderating factors which make it better for children to develop and make development easier for children, more, well, better. So that's a nice word, isn't it? Don't need to be complicated. And school practices for children as well as policies. And I'll tell you a little bit, we've got some answers for some of those questions in terms of what policymakers, practitioners and parents can do. Our key findings are that some of these capacities, innate capacities, are more gateway. I mean, in the sense that some of them are information in and some of them are processing. We're still trying to figure this out, but it's hard to empathize if you don't listen well. It's hard to discern patterns if you're not good at observation. So how can you connect with things properly, deeply, if children are not taught or protected, or their skills for observation and listening and others are not protected? They're not inherently positive or negative. You can over-reflect to a point of rumination, so it's shown in the evidence. And intuition in sensing can be used too much to guesswork, which affects adolescent classroom practices more than younger children. In dyads, people use different core capacities. Listeners work well with good inquirers, and so on. So we need enabling and safe space. I know we're talking about safe spaces now. Children don't learn when they're scared. They don't connect with frightening places. The world needs to be a safe place for children to fully achieve their holistic well-being. And then there's all sorts of covariates, as you would expect, that we need to take account of. If parents are poor, sometimes gender norms affect abilities and so on. The things you'll be used to. So quickly looking at relaxing, that's the capacity to ease tensions and thoughts and the rest there. These are the results we got from our study, that there was very early onset of relaxing in early childhood. And mindfulness, ability to be mindful, develops in preschool years and onwards, connected to psychological health, pain reduction, grieving and coping behaviors, anxiety, calmness, physical well-being, and sustained attention, inhibition, behaving, executive control, and so on. Just quickly say, when you see results like this, it means it came from a quality assured study. We found 260 studies and wrote 9 working papers on each, one of each for each of the core capacities, that looked at when the core capacity developed, the outcomes it was linked to, whether it linked to other core capacities and any covariates. You can see that relaxing improves children's ability to reflect, empathize, and sense also. Listening, capacity to tune into what surrounds. This is from in utero. There's a great study that says French babies cry with French accents and German babies cry with German accents. They could only do that if they were listening from in utero. Spatial listening, knowing where the sound is coming from, starts as early as 1.5. You know what's interesting is something I commonly say is that teachers will tell children to listen and pay attention. But I don't know, I haven't met anyone yet who was taught how to listen or asked if they knew how to listen. Certainly not in childhood. But being a good listener, obviously that's information in. So reading comprehension, learning outcomes, self-esteem, and all of the other core capacities are connected. Reflecting and child, this is my last example. There's 6 more, but it's in the book. Well, my book's for free, so I can't make anything from it, but good to share information. Reflecting is the capacity to explore other views, to ponder, look back, and project forward. We found that started around the age of 2. It affected working memory, cognition, and generosity. When not working, it affected poorer well-being, or when overused, creating anxiety in children. So basically, our evidence shows.
2 more minutes, please.
Excellent. I can do it in 2.
Okay, thanks.
So age-related development, this summarizes when the core capacities are being developed. From in utero and before children are speaking, listening, empathizing, inquiring are measurable and malleable, observed in high-quality evidence. Discerning patterns, embodying, observing, reflecting, sensing, all of these important things for connectedness before children reach school. As they enter school and go into adolescence, you see fluency in these things, the divergent thinking, self-regulation changes in adolescence, as many of you will have experienced. And the speed of the development and the type of development also matters. So cognitive empathy and effective empathy develop in different ways, and the speed of development is different. So what can parents and practitioners do? Well, everybody needs to start from the start, from the prenatal period onwards. It's no good to wait till school. A lot of the good stuff's already happening. Parents need to be good role models because children mirror what parents do. And without safe and well-resourced home environments, that means we need good welfare systems around these children. Our efforts to improve their connectedness and holistic well-being will be stifled. Given I've got like 30 seconds, straight on. Oh, hang on, that was practitioners. What I want to say here is multisensory teaching and learning is important, but also we need to reduce competing distractions. There's good evidence to say very colorful learning spaces or loud learning spaces not good for children's engagement with what's being taught in the classroom. But also, why is there so much on pencil and paper? Why can't we learn science through observation or drawing? These things work. But in order to do this, policymakers need to do more. They need to create the environments in which parents and practitioners can work well. Green natural spaces, learning in nature, support parents with their own learning opportunities, and recognize an interconnectedness of child development over the age and build a portfolio that really manages the needs of core capacities. And the last thing is to say, I'll push our efforts to standardize learning globally and international measures of literacy and focusing on reading and numeracy and foundational learning has pushed schools to do things, low stake standardized testing, taking up time doing things which crowd out core capacities. And we need to go back to a freer school base that works with children in their own contexts and facilitates their learning in a unique way for their own unique potential and their own inner diversity. Thank you. I went over.
Thank you. That's it. No problem. A minute, we can manage with a minute. Thank you so much, Dominique. And thank you all who are talking and writing in the chat. We will take the questions after all our speakers present. I'm glad people are asking about the PowerPoint. I saw that it will be available so you can dig deeper into all of this knowledge and information and wisdom that we are getting from our experts and our speakers. Our next speaker is Dr. Ali Sha'ar. He is the director of the Palestinian Child Institute at Al-Najah National University. He will speak about spirituality and how it contributes to children's mental health and physical well-being. Dr. Ali, are you here?
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
Ilham and colleagues, I am inspired by my colleagues who were speaking, and I think I will take you one step down towards looking at how spirituality and religion are contributing to the well-being of the children, and taking that from the angle about what does it mean to have religion contribute to the child development. I come from a city called Nablus, and in that city we live in harmony, the three religions, the Islam, the Christian, and the Jews. Looking at the religion as a contributor to the child development, I saw it from the perspective that it will go in harmony with the nurturing care framework, particularly contributing to the protection, to the stimulation, and to the mental health of children. Having that said, please allow me to reflect a little bit on the Islam religion that I come from, but also that I noticed it has a lot of commonalities with the Christian and with the Jews when it comes to the moral, ethical, and spiritual principles. In order for me as a public health and early childhood development person to understand the interlink with religion and spirituality, I consulted with religious people in my community. I went into the narrative of religion of Islam, whether within the Quran or a Sunnah, and I saw that the following. First, it is so sad to recognize and see that religion is took by politics to label or to stereotype or to exclude others. And in fact, I found that protection, stimulation, and mental health are embedded in the religious narrative that I have been able to consult with. Second, I saw that within Islam, there has been a high emphasis on spirituality, on moral, on ethics. And namely, I can tell that the Quran has described our Prophet Muhammad by one major characteristic, which is when he was saying, and you are a person with high morals and ethics, and repeated that, saying that if you were bold, if you were rude, you would have not achieved people coming around you. You will lose people. And our Prophet Muhammad saying, I was sent to support the moral and ethics of the people and communities. And that, I think, bridges the intention and the work that we are trying to do with our children is to support the ethics and to support their moral development. Second principle, the emphasis on the family as the foundation of the community formulation. When we say that the Quran emphasized the formulation of the family of mother and father and their children, and then formalized the relation between the children and parents by having empathy and sympathy and caregiving when parents grow old, and then emphasizing the community as being a mutually supportive entity in which children thrive. Another pillar has been the education by example. When we look at the family and community practice within religious rituals, like going to pray or celebrating the Eid, the festive after Ramadan, or the after going to Mecca, we see that there are many connective and community family supportive techniques and mechanisms that are transferred from parents to children by giving examples. The fifth issue I want to mention here, the ethical considerations that are embedded in the religion. First, believing in God. Why believing in God? God is the mighty, is the merciful, is the generous, is the fair entity when linked to that would support the tranquility that would support the feeling protected, but feeling also the ability to internalize adversities. Another principle within the ethical considerations in religion is the empathy. There is a say from Prophet Muhammad that a very faithful woman was punished because she has not given food to a hungry dog. And another sinful woman was sent to heaven simply because she was giving a drink water to a thirsty dog. And in that sense, these are examples that are transferred to children to feel and practice merciful and empathy, honesty.
Dr. Ali, 2 minutes, please. Wrap it up.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes,
2 minutes.
I need another 1 minute only.
Okay, good.
Honesty.
Thank you.
Prophet Muhammad was asked, does a Muslim drink alcohol? He would say yes. Does a Muslim do sins? He said yes. And then when asked, does a Muslim or a faithful person lie? He said he doesn't lie. And that's a crucial norm that we find very appropriate in religion. Equality. Religion would say all the people are equal when it comes to the comparison between people is only done according to the goodness they do in their lives, not according to the wealth, to the race, or to the gender they hold. In fact, humanity appears very much in the ethical education and the religious education. And we have in Islam, and I know in many of the religions, we say all people were born free, and there has no rule or no obligation or no power of anyone to slave anyone else, as they were born equal. These are what I could get from my dive into spirituality, religion, and connecting it to the development of the children, that I saw very interesting and very practical for us to use even in the arena of early childhood development. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ali. One of the discussions we had as a network while we were putting together the toolkit was the difference between spirituality and religion, and what we want to use in terms of describing the toolkit that we put time and effort in. And of course, there was lots of discussion on that. Our next speaker is Dr. Vinya. He is the president of the Saravadoya movement in Sri Lanka. Dr. Vinya will talk about the benefits of spirituality for children, and specifically for their physical, social, and emotional well-being, and how does this reflected, or how is it reflected in wider society? Dr. Vinya, are you with us?
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Ilham, and it's a great pleasure to join the panel.
Hear your voice. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. So I'll straight go into the topic and to answer the question that was posed to me. So I will share the experience on this topic based on the experience of the Sarvodaya movement of Sri Lanka, which is a social development grassroots organization with a very strong spiritual basis in its development. So in Sarvodaya, we look at development as an awakening process that is happening between individuals and also families, and then rural communities, urban communities, and then the nation as a whole, and then the world as a whole in the process of awakening. So we look at development as an awakening process that has to happen in the spiritual plane. Moral dimension has to be there, then the cultural dimension, then only based on these three pillars that social, economic, and political development should take place. So for more than 6 decades, Sarvodaya has been mobilizing communities to fulfill their basic needs, and based on principles of sharing, which are found in Buddhist philosophy. And though we are an organization inspired by Buddhist philosophy, we work across all different ethnic and religious groups in Sri Lanka. So it's still the largest grassroots movement where all religions are represented. So I will focus only on two initiatives that are connected to spiritual development and also early childhood development. The first one is called the holistic approach to motherhood, and the second one is early childhood development program, which Sarvodaya initiated in the 1970s, and it was a pioneering program for children between ages of 3 to 5 years, the early child development age, and starting preschool. So I'll describe that in a minute, but I'll start with this first program, which is called the holistic development to motherhood. So we know that the child development, if you really look at from a biological, scientific point of view, it starts with the conception, while the child is in the womb of the mother. So from the moment of conception, the unborn baby experiences the thoughts, feelings, and emotions of the mother and actions of the mother. So because we believe and scientifically proven that the minds of the both the child and the mother are connected and it's inseparable. Whenever a thought springs in the at the very early stages of development of the fetus, if a thought develops in the mother, it also, we believe, affects, and there are also studies done where it's proven that certain chemicals also communicate with the cells and tissues throughout the body. So as the unborn baby is part of the mother's body, and the future fetus, if the expectant mother is unstable and has to deal with so many feelings and emotions which are negative, then it's going to affect the child to be born later. So we believe that we have to support this stage of development of children, and the unborn baby's sense of awareness, self-awareness, dawns as early as the baby grows inside the mother's watery womb. So we have a program which connects both the mother as well as the father in mindfulness development meditation programs, and a large number of young couples who have just got married or those who already have children come and attend this program. So at the same time, we believe that the father also plays a very important role. The father is expected to create an environment of peace, love, and harmony and understanding, being mindful of the importance of mother's thoughts, feelings, and emotions in order to protect the mother and the baby from dangers of unwholesome thoughts. So we always promote the practice of mindfulness through meditation. It's the metta meditation, or it's compassion, and trying to generate positive energy towards oneself, the child, as well as to the others. So the programs need to be attended by both the mother and the husband or the father. And we believe that the ability of the unborn and the newborn to learn from the experience is an absorbing discovery that calls for immediate changes in the systems very positively, and also which influence the later stages of life. So this holistic approach to motherhood program, having studied the prenatal influences in a much broader way today, hundreds of mothers and their husbands or fathers are connected to this program. For the last 20 years, this program has evolved. So the objectives of this program is to make a way for physically and mentally to make way for a physically, mentally, and emotionally blessed healthy baby, and to enhance the spiritual, mental, and physical health of the mother, and also promote wholesome daily habits, practices, and behavior patterns that would help the mental and physical growth processes of the unborn baby, and to establish the prospective father's role in creating a congenial, vibrant environment for the health and well-being of the mother and the unborn baby, and to help create a family unit fortified with love, happiness, and understanding, and to create a peaceful environment for the health and well-being of the mother and the unborn baby in the community through public awareness, because it's not just the couples who participate in the program, but when we have them outside our center and in public places, it's also influencing the community around to also appreciate the value of such exercises, particularly as a country which has experienced a war, an internal war, a civil war for 26 years, where violence has been very prevalent, and to bring in that kind of inner peace through mindfulness and programs like this has been very groundbreaking and very unique. So finally, we also want to revive wholesome cultural and religious customs. There may be practices which are harmful for child development, but here we know that there are overwhelming amount of positive practices in spiritual setting, in religious setting, which we like to harness. So this program is conducted at the main center and also in throughout the country, and run by trained meditation practitioners as well as clinicians who are very much believing in neuroscience related to prenatal growth and early child development.
Venya, 2 minutes,
Yes.
please.
Okay,
Please wrap
I will
it
be
up. Thank
finishing.
you.
Yes. So early child development program, it stems from the concept of the same holistic child development. And in the 1970s, they started the child development services program. It has expanded over a period of more than 50 years. We have established more than 8,000 preschools around the country. Although we are not operating them directly, they are operated by village societies and other state and non-state institutions. And we have connection to about 1,500 child development centers and directly providing services to 150,000 children. Here again, the same approach is adopted, where children are helped in their cognitive, physical, psychosocial, and spiritual development through these 3 years of preschool education that they are receiving from years 2 to 5. And what have been actually the impact of this? So several generations of children have gone through this program, and they are appreciating spiritual values. Their mindfulness has been expanded, and their self-awareness and their emotional intelligence also has improved. So the social interactions and moral development, we have seen a clear difference between children who go through this program and other children who attend other models of preschool education. There is a difference, and they are better in coping with
Thank you,
stress and
Dr.
resilience.
Venya.
Yes,
Yes,
I'm
please.
finishing. This last cultivating a sense of wonder and curiosity. So these are the benefits, and our program as a whole has impacted several generations of children, and it is based on this recognition of importance of spirituality in child development. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Venya. Thank you for your insights, and thank you for all the nice pictures of children. It's always good to see children in our presentations and our discussions. Our last but not least speaker will be Ms. Sabine, who is a technical officer with the World Health Organization. And she will talk about how spiritual development of children contribute to all the efforts in the field of violence prevention, and how we can develop evidence on what works to address violence against children. Sabine, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ilham. So my name is Sabine, and I work, as Ilham said, in the Violence Prevention Unit in the World Health Organization. I will actually be really short because I think everything has been said, so I'll probably not be more than 4 minutes. And I want to start by thanking 4 people with whom I've been thinking about this a lot. One of them is online, Jiang Li, and also Katie Annis, Susan Hillis, and Sydney Tucker. We've been working together on a paper around nurturing spirituality in early years. And really more specifically about nurturing spiritual values and capacities as foundational for the prevention of violence. So we've heard a lot about, from Lisa, from Dominique, from all the speakers really, about the importance of nurturing spiritual values. We looked specifically at how important this is for the prevention of violence. So I'm going to dive straight into violence. I don't think that I need to repeat the importance of nurturing values and spiritual capacities in general, but I just want to take a deep dive into violence. So we know today that violence against children is a societal, public health, human rights issue. Just as a reminder, we know that today half of all children globally, aged 2 to 17 years, have experienced emotional, physical, or sexual violence in the past year. And this is based on data spanning across 96 countries. So it's a huge pandemic. 1 out of 2 children are suffering violence. We know the consequences. It includes injuries, mental health problems, poor attachment, substance abuse, and then, of course, perpetuation of social norms that reflect misogyny and acceptance of further violence, as well as the intergenerational impact of violence. So again, I can't state enough what a huge pandemic it is. When I look back at my youth, there was no violence, thankfully, nor in my home, nor in my community, nor in my school. And I think very much what was behind it is the fact that there was a lot of spirituality being nurtured in different ways. And I think Lisa said it very nicely, spirituality and religion are like a Venn diagram, they're overlapping constructs. But really the most important is that spiritual development is such an innate process within the child, and it really is independent of religious or other affiliations. And I think somebody said it nicely in an article that we wrote and that I had heard as well, is that it cuts below the dividing line of theological differences. So we're really going above or below any religion. And I just want to share a couple of slides with you on facts that I worked on with these colleagues that I mentioned at the start, because I think they're important. It's again, working at WHO, I'm very concerned with facts, and some of them were already mentioned by Lisa and by Dominique as well. But we know today that 84% of the world's population identifies with a spiritual path or tradition. How can we ignore it? There's more than 3,000 empirical studies that are investigating the relationship between spirituality and health. 350 of these are on physical health, 850 are on mental health, and they all show the association between spirituality and improved health outcomes. As Lisa said, among older children, spirituality is a predictor of greater happiness, lower depression, lower substance abuse. And we also know that involvement in spiritual and values and traditions promote a sense of purpose for victims of violence. So engaging them and giving them a sense of purpose, of volunteerism, helps them recover from their trauma. And last but not least, WHO has now included religion and spirituality as an essential component of psychiatric training and continuing professional development. At WHO, we realize that you cannot be a health worker or a psychiatrist or a psychologist without considering that fact that 84% of the world's population identifies with spiritual path or tradition. What are we talking about when we speak about values and capacities? I was so interested to hear Dominique, and I really liked the image that he showed with the girl at different moments, trying to develop this in different ways. With the authors, we came up with these 2 categories, so the intrapersonal values and capacities and interpersonal, and it's a wash list. But please, I'm sure you can find your way in these. So if you look at intrapersonal, we look at self-awareness, self-regulation, imagination, curiosity, wonder, gentleness, purposefulness, determination. And then if we look at interpersonal values, we're looking at love, compassion, respect, generosity, reliability, peace building, community mindedness. It seems huge, But I think if I was a child and I would look at these, I would say, okay, maybe I have 5 of each or 6 of each. But they're important I find it's really important, and I really like the way Dominique did it, putting them black on white, because what is it that we're after? We're after these things, and this is what we're trying to cultivate in our children. So then we looked at, great, we know that we have this problem, we know that we have this potential solution. Do we actually need to nurture these, or do they come from within? Spoiler alert, yes, we need to nurture them. I think Lisa said it very nicely, 85%, I think, or 75% comes from without, and only 25 or 20% comes from within. And so we do have to nurture it. And there are different ways to nurture it, which I will look into after. But I just want to continue a little bit on these capacities that we're looking into. So, for example, assertiveness is a combination. So to be assertive and effectively prevent violence, an individual needs to have developed the values of honesty, courage, and integrity to be able to stand up for someone. Problem-solving skills. It's a combination of intrapersonal and interpersonal. A child who's developed this has the capacity to be purposeful, to be better engaged in solving the problem, and to find alternative solutions other than violence. Similar, empathy. We need to help children understand, recognize feelings of other people, and then again helps them to avoid situations of conflict. And then peace building and community mindedness, the importance of giving children a sense of responsibility, of the sense of whole above the sense of just oneself, and then using those skills to better their school, their home, their community. So when we look at how we deliver these, yes, some of it comes from within, but actually quite a lot come from without. And again, Dominique showed it nicely. But this is what we're learning from the evidence in components of successful prevention programs. And why would we look at prevention education programs generally and not actually just apply these learnings to the delivery or the support of spiritual development? So we know that multiple sessions for children are important, different formats. It can be posters, it can be radios, it can be preaching, it can be discussions. Youth interactive, children need to speak amongst themselves. Parents need to be involved. School needs to be involved. And there needs to be an important component of skill building. Again, this is not my opinion. We have evidence to back up everything I've said in these past 5 minutes. And this is an important one. If these are components of successful prevention education programs, why are we not using them to integrate spirituality into programs with youth? My last slide, what next? So obviously, we need to continue to showcase the evidence. For example, of what we're doing now, we've heard so much evidence, but we also need to make sure that we start integrating spirituality into existing violence prevention programs. There are so many programs working today on the prevention of violence against children, and just, you know, Save the Children, World Vision, those are the big violence prevention, or UNICEF, Arigato, Caritas, you name them. They're all working on violence prevention and are often including components of spirituality. Some are not and must start considering them. And then vice versa, we know that faith leaders are gatekeepers to entire communities, and they're able to influence their beliefs. And let's see how much they can influence work with children to prevent violence. Last but not least, I really want to thank Arigato. I know you've been leading this consortium on nurturing values and spirituality for many years now. It's so important. There are other platforms like the Global Scientific Conference on Human Flourishing, Global Citizenship, Collaborative for Spirituality and Education. And I do think we're starting to see a shift. And the only way that we can continue to see the shift is that we bring together the evidence and the spirituality and make our message so loud and clear that people can't ignore it anymore. Over to you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sabine, and thank you to all of our wonderful speakers. We have about 20 minutes, maybe less, to take some questions, and then we will hear from Shiwan with some concluding remarks. I would like to ask every speaker one question, and you can answer it. Please limit yourself to 2 to 3 minutes. This is an opportunity to emphasize some of the points you wanted to address, but also to expand on some of the ideas based on the chat. And I want to thank Beth for preparing some and putting together these questions. So Dr. Lisa Miller, do you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. I have a question for you. What constitutes a strong spiritual core that can prevent diseases of despair and others, of course, that we all know about in children? And yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. The science is very clear that when we strengthen the capacity for the child to experience, feel, and know, to perceive, relational spirituality, a direct relationship with God, whatever one's word or understanding may be, Hashem, Allah, Spirit, and feel that love towards one another, fellow human beings and fellow living beings. I thought Dr. Ali Sha'ar emphasized those points beautifully. The greatest strength in the children, if I heard you correctly, was their relationship to God, to absorb moments of great upheaval and challenge and trauma. And of course, the story of the relationship with the dog, I will share with my students, because that is our relational spirituality to fellow human beings, fellow living beings. So those two forms are the same, the very same part of the brain, the neurodocking station, the circuits with which we are all born. There's one spiritual brain, and we all have it all over the world. And it is the capacity for relational spirituality. We are loved, held, guided, and never alone. And we can feel that love and turn to other living beings and human beings so that we are loving, holding, guiding, and never leave anyone alone. When that is strong, the rich 2/3 embrace, there are hundreds of peer review articles that we are healthier, we are more resilient, we are more ethical and connected. And yes, we're even more capable in the world in terms of outward traction. There's nothing more important in child development than to strengthen the spiritual core of the whole child.
And do you think parents have a role to play? How do you see that? Besides giving them a supporting environment, but please, in 1 minute.
Yes. When we look at the science, the parent is tremendously impactful in the 2/3 embrace, the formation of the spiritual core. There's a natural inchoate capacity that the parent and grandparent and significant committed loving adults, when there is no parent in the faith community, a teacher, can take the mantle and hold. And the two things that we can do is walk the walk and talk the walk, which is to say, live out relational spiritual values, unconditional love, radical love, forgiveness, many of the beautiful qualities that Sabine had put up there. Walk the walk, talk the walk, narrate what it is we are doing so that the child understands there is a landscape of spiritual reality. Narrate what we're doing so the child knows what you do to the least of these, you do to me. He is your brother. He is your sister on 4 with wings. So this is a way of narrating that is ultimately a form of transparency.
Mm-hmm.
What we really are as parents is we're ambassadors. We're ambassadors of Source. We're ambassadors of God. And we are
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Lisa. Dominique, can you hear me okay? Yes?
Yeah, very well. Thank you.
So, great. So there was a question about indicators of measuring core capacities, and I think you listed a link for that. But if you want to address where, how are there indicators? And then the next question is about empathy, and for people, for children to empathize, they need to listen well. How can we encourage children to listen better? I guess these were the 2 points, 2 questions that I would like you to address in 2 minutes as well.
Okay, just
If you can.
plenty of time. Thanks, Elaine. So the 9 working papers in the report, I've only included studies that have conceptually, methodologically, and statistically met levels of quality where we think they are actually operationalizing or fully measuring the phenomena that we're calling the core capacities. So there's 260 studies, and there's differences. There's more empathy, there's more mindfulness than there is about sensing, but you'll find it all there. But basically, there is a lot to do. If we're going to go from prioritizing literacy and numeracy for 7 and 8 year olds to empathy and listening and some of the really sort of innate good stuff we're trying to do, we have a lot of work to do in terms of measurement to get it into the types of discussions and around the right tables for change. But I'm happy to follow questions up by email, no problem about that. We're going to do some more work on this in the coming year or so. In terms of empathy, you put it, so what do children need to do? It's not what children need to do. It's not only what children need to do. The evidence suggests that children that grow up in unsafe space, where they're the victims, will show lower effective empathy. Doesn't matter about their listening, all of the things controlled for. What's interesting is it doesn't change their cognitive empathy nor their social attention, so they know what's going on. They know they should feel empathetic, but they only mentally they can engage, but emotionally they can't, because the space isn't safe for them to be the ones that are the agents of empathy. Empathy is innate, and so children are born with it, and girls and boys develop differently cognitive and affective empathy. But it's all about safe environments. It's all about, I say the key core capacity is relaxation, and no one can relax under pressures of violence. So there's the evidence is in the paper on that. I think that's my 2 minutes. Thanks, Elaine.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm going to ask Sabine to respond, because I know that you have a hard stop just in case. We have a question for you on the role of schools to nurture values, ending violence and different other values to help prevent violence and risky behavior for youth. If you can answer that, thank you.
Thank you, Lam. Interestingly, I don't know where the person lives who is asking this question, but here in Switzerland, where I live, you are not allowed to mention the word God, spirituality in the school. It's really shocking. That said, we know that one of the 2 strategies that have the most impact to prevent violence against children is parenting support. So supporting parents 8 to 10 sessions, and school-based interventions to teach children life skills. Thankfully, the Swiss schools do have life skills programs a little bit sometimes, but that is clearly, so clearly a strategy that works to teach children about the prevention of violence and to teach children these values and capacities that we're speaking about. They don't call it spirituality, they call it life skills. Call it what you want, as long as you're transmitting it. And thankfully, in northern countries, as we know, Sweden, Finland, Norway, the Netherlands, this is common practice. So these school-based interventions are absolutely essential. And honestly, I don't care if you want to call it, as a Trojan horse, call it life skills, when we know that actually what we're trying to do is nurture values and capacities in young children. And if teachers feel more comfortable with that, then so be it. But absolutely essential.
Thank you, Sabine. So, Dr. Ali, along these lines, do you see a difference between spirituality and ethics and morals? I think this would be a good question to define. In your view and the way you presented Islam and religion, I think it would be a good follow-up question to your talk and to Sabine's response. Please go ahead. You're muted, Dr. Ali.
For sure, there is an interrelation between spirituality and religion. And if I may say that how I see it, I see that spirituality is what is embedded in us, regardless, or within the society as norms, regardless which religious label it does have. As I mentioned, there are 3 religions that I look at, and the basic normal and ethical standards that you would see for the normal human being that we want are embedded within the 3 of them. So spirituality for me is the link between humanity and acting human and the guiding principles that are brought through the religion, whether it is Islam, Christianity, or Judaism. And this is the way I see it. Thank you.
Wonderful. And do you see, just to follow up, do you see that the family can play a role in ethics and morals in children, specifically in your context?
Very big yes, very big yes. Actually, we see that there is an intergenerational transformation, a transition of the spiritual norms, the religious norms, and the ethics. And this is the best way to see that the core principles, ethical principles of the religion need to be translated first by example giving, second by having the children exposed to the practices of the parents that should be in line with the moral principles and ethics provided by the religion. Example provision is very critical, and this is how my colleague was saying. When we walk the talk, then it is easy to have our children walk that talk as well. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. So we heard about the science, we heard about evidence, we heard about spirituality, religion, prevention of violence, and a holistic approach to children and nurturing spirituality. I would like here to ask Dr. Vinya to help us address this issue that I don't think we've addressed yet. It's the invasion, the digital invasion, and how can parents, teachers, nourish spirituality in children? Should they use AI to do that? What can they do? How can we do that with children? I know it's a hard question, but let's
Ilham, did you see everyone nodding at the same time?
Yeah,
it's
a very hard question to address, to respond to, of course. But I think before coming to AI, because we haven't reached that stage yet, although, at least for the children, right now our challenge is really the use of social media by children. And also, so we have a lot of child exploitation, online sexual harassment, so many things happening. So what we have initiated is not for very young children, but school-going children who are between ages of 12 and 16 or 18, where we have actually, I just put the link in the chat box also. It's called IT Yahamaga. Yahamaga is values-based use of information technology. We don't believe in denying the children the access to information communication technology or tools, mobile phone or whatever. But we say that you have to do it in a responsible way. And we train the students and peers to do that. And we have developed some modules over a period of like 10 years. We have also partnered with organizations like Meta, Facebook, Microsoft, to evolve these very simple methods of really teaching the children and also the parents and teachers as well. Because the problem is there is a generation gap. The present generation of teachers sometimes are not very tech savvy, whereas the children themselves are much more advanced. So that's another problem. So the way to address is really looking at how it can be productively used, and then say these are the ways in which you can get into trouble. So we have ourselves prepared some cartoon-based modules for children to look at how safe use of social media and so on. So it has to evolve, but when it comes to more advanced technology use like AI, it's an ongoing debate. Honestly, I really don't know, but the basis for protection of children comes from a spiritual. You look at your inner self, your connection to yourself, and then build on that, but you provide the practical tools as well. Not that don't look at porn sites because you have to be religious. No, it comes out of a different kind of understanding and conviction. So that is the way forward as I see.
Thank you so much. And I have more questions to all of you, and I'm sure our audience does as well. I do encourage everyone to correspond with you and look at the slides and the PowerPoints. Now I would like to hand it over to Dr. Shiwan from Fetzer Institute to give us some concluding remarks. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I hope you can all hear me. Greetings from China. As I'm spending time with my aging mom, this topic of spirituality means everything to me. When I travel all the way back to my mom, my hometown. It's fascinating, truly honored to be the one to close this wonderful time, because who am I? Really, who am I? Get to be on the same panel with the greatest research, Lisa, Dominic, Dr. Nasa, Dr. Vanya, Dr. Ali, and Sabine. I'm so excited. I think you also feel me, right? At the peak point, we had about 100 participants. If we paid attention, people from all over of the world. You just heard many different research. They come with different methodologies. They use in different sample size to study different demographics, which remind me a wonderful metaphor, which is many blind person touching a huge elephant. Okay? Born into big mystery. We're all on this endless pursuit to what fundamentally the nature of reality, the ultimate truth. We recognize there is something more and greater. We use the word spirituality to describe what we all share in this field. I love that. I love the diversity. I love the reaching diversity approach in this reality. However, the only way to find as we get closer to the truth is by bringing all pieces together. Therefore, we have a better and fuller understanding of the truth. I hope you share my same excitement that a field used to be criticized for lacking of evidence, for lacking of validity, for lack of recognition, the rigor that we do. Now we have it. When Lisa mentioned her research is based on hundreds peer-reviewed top journals, Dominic referenced the same thing. Sabine mentioned World Health Organization is based on 800 peer-reviewed empirical reviews. Guys, I'm excited because we now have a field and the work has been taken on by organizations such as UNICEF, World Health Organizations, such as Columbia University, and so much more. In case you still feel, oh, I'm isolated, I don't know who else is doing this work, now you have it. So I'm really, in a closing way, it's kind of being the cheerleader for the field. We have a field, we have a community, right? In case you need to find more, this is not just a one-off event. Arigato International. How can I thank you enough? Amazing work in creating and supporting this community. And the FETS Institute, I do have to introduce myself, right? I'm Xiaoan Li. I'm a senior program officer at the FETS Institute. Our mission is how build the spiritual foundation for a loving world. It is that calling led us to wonderful people and organizations such as Lisa, such as Dominic, such as Sabine, such as Arigato International. One thing leads to the other. Recognizing we're all on this journey, seeking for the same thing. Nothing is more important than the feeling that we're all in this together. So, this is not a one-off event. Check out all the participants, the speakers. Can I thank all of you for spending the time to share your wonderful research. Check out the National Council for Spiritual and Education Conference. Lisa's leading capably. They have an in-person gathering next fall at Teachers College. So I guess I really don't know anything else, as we promised in the chat, the recording, the PowerPoint slide will be shared with you as you dive even deeper into the field. Can we promise each other that we are not alone, that we're doing an even better job? Fundamentally, what we're trying to do is to integrate different ways of knowing, There is a scientific way of knowing, which is a blessing. Yeah, there's a spiritual way of knowing, which is foundational. You hear me? So I just want to send you off either it's a good night, good morning, and a good afternoon. Thank you so much, Dr. Nasser, again, for the wonderful moderation. It's
Thank
a
you.
treat.
Thank you. Thank you, Siobhan. And we hope your mom recovers quickly. And I would like to thank everyone, our speakers, our audience, and of course, arigato, Maria Lucia, Beth, and Vedika for organizing this webinar. And let's all remember, and let's all walk the talk. Thank you so much and have a wonderful evening. Maria Lucia, you have a minute if you want to say something.
I just want to thank you, Ilham, for the great moderation, to all the speakers, and Shawan also for the closing remarks, and all the participants for joining us. We will continue with the discussions. As Shawan said, this is the beginning of several meetings that we want to continue having. I think it's clear that we have a movement, and we want to build on the experiences, the expertise of the people that have been working on this, and capitalize on that. So the great work of Lisa and all her research, which I think is fundamental for the field, the great work that Dominic is doing, looking holistically at the well-being of the child, the great work that Sabine is doing connected with the violence prevention angle, which I think is also a missing piece. And of course, in the work in the field that comes from the concrete experiences of organizations like Sarvodaya in Sri Lanka, and the work that Dr. Ali Shah is doing in Palestine, in contexts affected by violence, by fragility, by violence. I think this work is so much needed. So I just want to thank everyone, and there are links on the chat, and invite you to also get to know more about the toolkit on the spiritual development of children that was launched last November, and that was developed by the Consortium Nurturing Values and Spirituality in Early Childhood. So thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, Ilham, for
wonderful evening. Thanks, Maria Lucia, and have wonderful evening, everyone. Bye-bye.